Are you a proponent of divine simplicity?
Yeah. I just wanted to say real quick. Let's say I were to grant you that divine simplicity is unbiblical and the Bible doesn't teach divine simplicity. Well, if God isn't absolutely divinely simple, then He just doesn't exist.
Well, see, I disagree with that. So if you define God as something that's divine simple, as something that's simple, then it's going to be true that that definition of God doesn't exist. But is it your position that divine simplicity is biblical? I take it you
Uh,
wouldn't want to. I take it you
it's
wouldn't probably want to
it's
give
my
me.
it's my position that it's necessary.
Okay, so I want to know. Do you think it's something that contradicts the Bible?
Does divine simplicity contradict the Bible? I don't think so, but if it did, then just the Bible wouldn't be true.
Okay. So then here's what I'm going to say, right? I want to press on you. I think you're going to have to say that the Bible's just not true. Okay, I think that's the position we're going to have to get in. Now, once we're there, we can have a dialogue. We can have a question about,
Mhm.
okay, well, do we reject the Bible on this? But I do want to make it clear to you that as a proponent of divine simplicity, I think that's the place where you're going to be put in.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, so let me ask you a question. I'm gonna put a proposition on the screen here. This is gonna be a
Mhm.
proposition of one of my arguments. Do you see it up here? It says, I'll bring it down a little bit. So would you agree with this proposition? Moses in the Old Testament, he either saw none of Yahweh, and by this I mean he saw like not Yahweh at all. He didn't see any of Yahweh, or he saw all of Yahweh, or he saw a part of Yahweh. What this I'm looking to do here is I'm looking to get kind of a logically exhaustive list of possibilities of what we could say is the case
Mhm.
epistemically. Does it seem
So,
to be exhaustive?
yeah, I would agree it's exhaust. Yeah. I would say he would.
Yep. Just so we're clear, I just want to make sure we're on the same page that this is exhaustive. So like
Yeah,
this is just
yeah.
this is just the first premise, yeah. So here's what I'm gonna do. Here's what I'm gonna say, and then I'm gonna say I have a second premise of this. Let me see.
Okay.
Sorry, one second. See if I can bring this up here. Let's see. Okay, here we go. So here's the next point of my argument. Here's what I'm going to say. You've already granted me premise one. Now I'm going to say it's not the case that Moses saw none of Yahweh or all of Yahweh. And what's going to follow from that is that Moses saw part of Yahweh, and that's just going to entail that divine simplicity is then non-biblical. So because you've already granted me premise one, what you're going to
Mhm.
have to do at this point in the dialogue is you're going to have to reject premise two. Do you reject premise two?
That it's not the case that Moses saw none or all. So, yeah, I think it's just the way you would unpack this semantically. So, can we maybe go into the like how you're defining these things?
So I mean that Moses saw God. Like how like right now, one second, I'll bring this down here for a second. Yeah, at least before I put this up, you're seeing my premises on the screen,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, 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 yeah. I see,
Yeah.
I
So
see.
before this, you were, like you're seeing your phone right now. Like if you look
Mhm.
down, maybe you see a table, stuff like that. That's how I'm using see. Like it's just in the general everyday sense of the word.
So,
I
I
think that
would.
Moses saw God. Like he he
Okay.
he saw him there.
So I would say it was an expression of Yahweh. So
Okay.
if semantically, now if you want to put it into one of those categories, well,
hmm
this is where we would have to start unpacking it semantically. Now I would say the expression, right, isn't necessarily all, but it's the act. And with ADS, we don't say the act is substance. We say Yahweh is substance. So, though if you're defining part as just a piece of a whole or some form of like compository, if you're unpacking it like to comport some form of compository thing, then I wouldn't agree with that. But
Okay, can I ask you this? So
Mhm.
then we said we had this logically exhaustive list of
Yeah,
options.
yeah.
Your view, where would you plug how you view it into those list of options?
So I would say he saw all, but there's a key distinction here. When we say all we're saying is he saw the expression that was revealed. That expression is its substance. The way Aquinas says it, expression is its substance, right? But the act is related to the substance, but it is not. So we would have to apply some form of like impure relative
Well,
identity.
I guess I'm confused then because it
Mhm.
seems like you started to say that you're going to tell me that Moses saw all of God. It's like, okay, I
Yeah,
can
yeah, yeah.
understand that, yeah. But now it sounds like you're telling me, okay, so is that the category then that you would fit it into, that Moses saw all of God?
Yeah, he saw all because when we but I made a key distinction. Aquinas says that expression isn't substance, but it is related. Right. So I would say he saw the expression of
Okay, do you think God
Mhm.
is substance?
Yeah, God is existence, yes.
Okay, yeah. Do you think that Moses saw all of the substance of God?
What do you mean all of the substance of God? God is
Okay,
existence.
so the one
Yeah.
substance that God is. Do you think Moses saw all of that?
He see all of that substance?
Yeah,
Um,
that seems to be what you're telling me.
I'm saying he saw the expression of the substance.
But I don't know what that means because is the expression something distinct from the substance?
Yeah. I cashed this out to you already. I already cashed this out. I said,
No, you told me what Aquinas says, but
mhm.
I don't think a lot of what Aquinas says is coherent, and so I don't think the semantic content of the stuff that you're saying, I don't think it makes sense. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to parse out like what does this even mean? So is the expression something that is distinct from the substance? It seems like you said yes.
So the expression is, so we would apply some form of impure relative identity here. Do you know what that is?
Yeah, I'm familiar with that concept. I don't think it's coherent. I don't think there's any reason to accept it, and I don't think it helps you here. What I'm
Yeah.
wanting to know, so you've told me I've got this thing. There's God, right? This substance, and God is the
Yeah.
substance. And you've told me there's this expression. What I want to know, you're telling me Moses saw the expression, right? What I want to know is this expression Moses saw, is it the thing that you're saying is God?
So that expression, no, I would say that expression is the word,
Okay,
and I
so
would
then
say,
Moses didn't see God. Then that's so you're
well,
not
no,
going with the Moses
here's
saw
where it
all of
comes.
God
That
option.
expression is the word, and we would define Jesus as that expression.
Okay, but so it seems to me then that you're just contradicting yourself. So I'm still
I'm not.
trying. I'm still just trying to figure out what category to put you in here,
Yeah,
right? I'm still trying to
he
figure.
saw all of God, but he saw the expression, and we cash out Jesus as that expression.
Okay, but you just told me. But okay, so then let's go back. So the expression of God,
Hmm.
and you're saying that the expression of God is something that's distinct from God, right? Like is
No, the
distinct from the
expression of God
substance.
is God. Jesus, we would say Jesus is God. Jesus is the expression, so therefore he saw God. Yeah.
Okay, so he saw all of God.
So we wouldn't say all because all would entail the full triunity and the fullness. So we would just say that expression Jesus revealed
So he
was
saw part of God.
was well, if you yeah, honestly, my bad. We could say all of God. Yeah, sure.
Okay,
Yeah.
so you're committing yourself to the position that Moses saw all of God,
Yeah.
and God is this one divine substance, right?
Well, it's we wouldn't say divine substance. God
Or
is
this one
substance.
substance. Oh, this substance. God is substance. So Moses
Yeah.
saw all of this substance. Okay. So you can commit yourself to that. This is biblically untenable because we're
Yeah,
told
I know
in,
what you're about to bring up. Yeah.
what am I about to bring up?
You're about to bring up the verse that says, "No man has seen God's face" or something. Is that what you're about to bring up?
Yeah, so this is Exodus 33,
Hmm.
right? So Moses says to him, starting in verse 18, Moses said, "Please show me your glory." And he said, and this is then God speaking, and he said, "I will make all my goodness pass before you and proclaim before you my name, the Lord. And I will be gracious to whom I will be gracious and will show mercy on whom I will show mercy." But he said, "You cannot see my face, for man shall not see me and live." And the Lord said, "Behold, there's a place where you shall stand on the rock, and while my glory passes by, I will put you in a cleft of the rock, and I will cover you with my hand until I have passed by. Then I'll take away my hand, and you shall see my back, but my face shall not be seen." Now, in this passage, right, it seems to be, and this is something that I can quote Old Testament scholars who agree with this. Moses is here is requesting to see Yahweh in all his kingly splendor. He's wanting to see the glory. That's the word of kavod. It has to do with weightiness, heaviness, right? So Moses is requesting to see the whole shebang, so to speak. And
Yeah.
Yahweh is saying, "You cannot see my kind of direct, my direct presence in its fullness and live," right? So if you're telling me that Moses saw all of Yahweh, and Yahweh is saying, "You can't see all of me," it seems like you're just contradicting Scripture. And
Okay.
this may be the point then in the dialogue where you say, "Yeah, I just think that Scripture's wrong," and then we can have a conversation about that.
Well, okay, yeah. So this is a part we'll start to unpack it. So I clearly said, right, that Moses saw the expression and we would cash out the expression as Jesus, right? For example, do you think the apostles, wait, you hold to Jesus being God, right?
Yeah, I affirm
Okay,
the
amazing. Do
deity
you
of
think the
Christ.
apostles, when they saw Jesus, when Jesus said, "If you've seen me, you've seen the Father," did they see God when they saw Jesus?
I think that they saw God, but I don't think Jesus is identical to the Father.
Yeah, within what sense? In pure relative sense, right? Because if you
Yeah,
have to,
I'm telling you, I reject. I don't think this whole like impure relativism. I don't think it's coherent. I just don't think these sentences make sense.
well,
Like I can make sense of like a classical identity, where we assess identity through Leibniz's law, like I understand that conceptually what it means to say A is identical to B. I get that. These statements about like, well, A is identical to B, but actually A is not identical to B. I don't think that makes any like coherence response.
Okay.
And so if that's your response to me, I'm just gonna say I don't see how it's coherent.
Okay,
And
well,
then we can have a conversation about that.
Okay,
But
yeah.
but before we go to Jesus and the New Testament stuff, are you then admitting that your view contradicts Exodus 33?
No. That's what we're
Okay.
discussing right now.
Okay. So you did tell me that like we saw all of Yahweh,
No,
and now.
okay, well, yeah. So what I
So what do
explained
you think?
that's I
What do you
meant
think God is
definition.
saying in Exodus 33?
Yeah, he's talking about glory.
What is glory?
Yahweh's glory. So we would just say his the way we would cash out glory would just be all his divinity.
Okay. So Moses requests to see all of Yahweh's divinity. Okay.
Yeah, of course,
So
yeah.
all of Yahweh, and then how does God respond to this?
He tells him you can't see all my divinity. Yeah.
Okay, so you told me earlier that Moses saw all of Yahweh, and now you're saying that Yahweh is himself
Yeah,
saying
well, yeah.
that
So we would
Moses
say,
can't see all of his divinity.
wait,
So
so
I don't
we
see how
would,
that isn't just a straight up
yeah,
contradiction.
I'll give justification. So within the Thomistic worldview, we would say that Moses saw an expression, right? And then this is where we can apply some form of impure relative identity sense. But if you don't want to accept impure relative identity, you have to give a justification to why it's incoherent.
Okay, yeah. So let me ask you this: so if I'm working from a classical a framework, right? A classical identity framework, you understand
Okay.
what I'm saying when I'm asking the question, like, is an expression identical to God? Do you think? Let me ask this: do you think, like, do you go with the idea that there are no statements of absolute identity? Are you a impure relativist, or excuse me, are you a relative identity theorist who say there is no such thing as these type of like absolute identity statements?
So I would put myself in the category of an impure relativist because if you don't, then you just fall into modalism. If you don't apply impure relativism.
But impure relativists, they accept that you can still make statements of classical identity. Like that's what makes them impure, like relativist, identity relativists. Yeah.
But I'm
So
saying,
then if you adopt impure relativism, you're leaving on the table for me to ask you questions about absolute identity, like as would be governed by Leibniz's law.
yeah. I'm saying that it's because of the case, because of the impossibility of the contrary. It has to be the case.
Okay, so the expression that Moses sees, is it absolutely identical to Yahweh?
Within an impure sense, yeah.
That doesn't make sense for you to say within an impure. I'm not asking you in an impure sense. I'm specifically asking you in a classical sense. Yeah, because we
In a
just agreed that
classical
I'm
sense?
allowed to. Yeah. So okay, yeah.
Well, when you say classical sense, well, I don't think we can apply the created order to God.
That isn't the question. I'm just asking you. I'm asking you if I can ask questions about classical identity in a classical sense, absolute identity, not relative identity. You said you're an impure relativist, impure relative identity
Well,
theorist,
I would
which
apply,
means
I
you're
would
not
apply
completely
some form.
rejecting absolute, statements of identity. And so
Well,
what I'm
I would
asking
apply
you a
some form.
statement.
That's
Yeah.
what I'm saying. I would apply some form of impure relative identity. I wouldn't go entirely with the thing because I think when we go entirely with it, we just because John Edward made this big mistake with impure relative identity. He entirely went with it and he fully devoted it. So when you have that, the end conclusion leads that A is intrinsically identical to B, but B wouldn't be intrinsically identical to A, and that's the mistake Edward even made when it applies to Edwardian metaphysics. So I wouldn't say I would still hold the notion of impure relative identity, but when we come to the ontological relational state of it, because the recursivality of it wouldn't add up. So I wouldn't apply the ontological relational state of it, but I would apply the relation between intrinsic factors.
Okay. So what then do you think is God saying to Moses? Do you think he's saying you can't see my expression? Do you think he's saying you can't? Do you think God expects Moses to have these concepts of identity theory and all of this in his head? Like, what do you think Exodus 33 is saying? Let's start there.
Yeah. So since I apply Edwardian metaphysics, God is saying you can't conceive of me, right? We can't conceive of a maximum being, right? He's just saying
Wait,
you can't
can I
conceive.
pause you there?
Mhm.
He doesn't say conceive, he says see. Moses doesn't say, can I conceive of your glory? He says, show me. He's asking to see something.
Yeah, that's
so by
yeah,
shifting
this is
that,
what
then
I'm
you're
saying.
contradicting the scripture. This isn't about sight. Excuse me, this is about sight. It's not about just conceiving, thinking of.
Well, no, I would. So the way I would interpret it is he's saying conceive, right? Because I only think there's three different things when it applies to word in metaphysics. There's perception, conception, and ontology, right? This would fall into the category of conception, right? Because you can't perceive God, right? But we can, and you can't conceive.
But wait, but that's you can say I interpret it this way. I'm going to ask you the exegetical question of where is that in the scripture? Because I can point blank look at the text which says, "Please show me your glory," and then it's after this that God says, "But you won't. No man shall see me and live." So this isn't. It isn't talking about conceiving. You can say, "Well, I'll just pretend the verse says something different."
Yeah, I'm saying we'll logically follow it because there's only three types of things that can be registered: ontology, conception, and perception. So I'm saying it would have to logically follow that it's one in those categories. So we can just narrow out which categories it's not in.
Wait, okay. So if I'm looking at my glass, I have a glass sitting at on my table, right? I'm looking at that. I'm seeing it, right? Does it seem?
Conceiving. Yeah.
Okay, so then you're using conceiving in a different manner. Okay, so maybe that's part of the problem.
Well, it's both. It's both. You're perceiving the particular and conceiving the universal.
Okay, but there's a problem there because to say that someone conceives of something is to say something. Usually, it has the idea of they're thinking about it, right? It's usually this idea of like, well, I can conceive of like a planet made entirely out of jello or something like that. Like I can you think of something like that. We use it. We can say conceive and stuff like that. It sounds then like you're using conceive in a different way. It seems like you're using conceive in a broader way. Is that correct?
So I would use conceive as just the way I would cash out conceive is just to understand the concept. So you would be understanding the concept of the universal and you would be perceiving the particular. Because I told you in my worldview, only three things exist: conception, perception, and ontology.
Okay, so then let me so God is saying, under your view, God is saying to Moses here, you cannot conceive of me. Is he saying you cannot understand any aspect of me?
When he's saying you cannot conceive of me, all he's saying is that. So this is why I said earlier God is substance. We would cash out within a Thomistic worldview that God is substance, God is reality, right? So God is a very nature of existence itself because God is existence, right? He grounds all concepts and existences. So when he said you can't see all of me, right? We could see that this is falling under conception, right? Because we can't.
But wait. Let's pause there. Wait. You're saying we can see this as. Do you have any evidence whatsoever that the author of Exodus or Moses in this situation would have these ideological frameworks that you're working with? Just yes or no. Is there any conception that the author or the reader of this text would have these ideological frameworks?
Of Christian idealism?
Of all this stuff that you're telling me, of these distinctions between conceive and all that, is there any conception of that they would have that?
Yeah. I think they would appeal to idealism. Yeah.
You think someone reading this, an original person pre-Christian who's reading this, you think they're going to have the concepts of impure relative identity and things that you've articulated?
We're talking about idealism, right? So Christian idealism, all it is that it's just thoughts and ideas of God. That's all Christian idealism is.
No, that's massively underselling. Like idealism it's not just the idea of like, oh, God has thoughts and ideas. It's a much stronger concept.
It's saying that logic, all things that exist are just ideas of God. That's where Christian idealism comes to play when I said only conception, perception, and ontology exist.
Okay. So let me ask you another question. Okay, so all things that exist are just ideas of God, okay?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So my cup that's in front of me is an idea of God.
Yep.
Okay, so that is that something then that is logically distinct from God? Does my cup have all the properties that God has?
Well, your cup doesn't really have ontology.
What are you talking about, dude? I can see my cup here. Yeah, of course it has ontology. Like
you can, yeah. So when I said you can only cache things, or you can only register these things in three different categories, is perception, conception, and ontology, right? You can conceive.
Why should I think that's the case? You're importing this framework, right? You're importing this this framework that I see nothing in the Bible to support this framework. I see no idea that anyone reading the Bible would have had this framework. Why should I?
This framework? Yes, he did.
No, why? No, it doesn't.
Paul literally ran early transcendentalism, right?
What he did. Describe what you mean by that.
Yeah. Do you know what like presuppositionalism and early transcendentalism is?
I'm familiar with this concept of
Yeah, Paul,
presuppositionalism
Paul
when it comes
literally
to.
ran transcendentalism in Romans 1. He said that the trees, the sky, star, all those things are reflect. He said we start with God, right? We don't start with the creation. We start with
What? No.
God.
Are you talking about how the heavens declare like God, like God's invisible attributes can be seen in creation? Is that
Yeah,
what you're talking
yeah,
about? All
yeah.
that's saying is that creation testifies about the nature of God. Like you don't
Yeah,
have to.
that's what
You don't.
yeah, wait, hold on. That's what presuppositionalism is.
No,
It says
is
that
it what? That's
yeah,
completely consistent
wait,
with natural
no.
theology. What are you talking about?
Yeah, wait, Paul. Yes, he's saying everything that exists is reflective of God. Everything true that exists is reflective of God. That's literally what transcendentalism states.
No, no, that's first off, that's not what he said. He specifically talks about creation. He's talking about the
Yes,
creative order.
creation.
Whoa,
Yes.
whoa. Yeah, so he's talking about the creative order. And he is saying the created order, it testifies about who God is. Just as like if
Yes.
I yeah, nobody denies that. I can accept all that. And still reject this Thomistic framework that you're bringing and still reject this
Of
distinction you're making about
transcendental. Wait,
conceive
wait.
and all
So,
that. Yeah.
wait. So, do you not think truth is reflective of God?
What do you mean?
Wait. Do you think we can make any true we can make any proposition and it not be reflective of, without presupposing God?
I don't know what you mean when you say without presupposing. So I think atheists can make statements that are true statements despite the fact that they don't have
Do you think that
beliefs
wait?
about God.
Okay, yeah, they can do it, but do you think they presuppose God when they do it or no? Do you think it's possible to not presuppose God in any statement you make?
I think atheists
And if you say
intuitively
no,
know
you
that
just
God
give up.
exists. What? Okay, wait.
Wait,
I want to. We're getting like way off track here. I want to like we're getting way off track. I want to focus in on the argument that I originally gave because we're gonna then go down a line of thought there. Okay, so it seems to me. Let me make sure I understand. Okay, so then when Moses is depicted as seeing Yahweh in the Old Testament, right? You're saying he sees an expression of Yahweh. When I look at my cup, am I seeing an expression of Yahweh?
are you saying an expression of Yahweh? Can you say that? No.
I'm not saying this to be mean. I don't even think you know what you believe
I
because
do.
I,
Yeah,
I
you
don't
would
think
be
you
seeing an
do.
indirect expression. Yeah, yeah. I just said it. Indirect.
Okay, so I may just bring someone else up, man, because I'm not trying to be mean. I just don't like. I feel like we're going
I
in
mean, I don't
circles.
think
I
you
feel
can
don't.
just keep up with my metaphysics. It seems like you can't.
I don't
Track.
think your metaphysics is coherent. That's the problem. I think you're saying things,
Well,
and
you
I do
haven't
have someone who's
attacked
been
any
requesting.
argument I've given.
You haven't given me an argument. You've made me
Yes, I
statements.
have.
No, you haven't. You've given me statements, right? You've given me statements about this is an expression of God, and then you've presupposed a framework, and I've asked you about like explanations of that framework. So I see you, skeptic. I'll bring you up in just a second. I'll bring skeptic's been running to come up. I'll bring them up in just a second. I've been asking you questions to try to understand your framework, and then when I ask you that, you're just like, it seems like you don't know what you're saying, and I don't know what you're saying. So we can go back and we can try to do this again. I'll let
Okay,
skeptic
yeah,
answer
yeah.
their
Okay,
question.
I'll
Yeah.
provide a simple argument. All
Wait,
things
so,
are.
wait, no, wait. Let me. The skeptic's about to give their argument. They ask a question. He's been waiting.
Oh,
What's up,
okay.
skeptic?
Okay.
Yes, first of all, thank you. And first of all, I am not a Thomistic, and I want to say there is in my view, a stronger argument.
I'm not a full
God,
Thomist
last
either.
time when I was an evangelical, had around 17 attributes, and they could be always God, godly or divine. But God is described good, you understand, all-knowing, or things like that. So to me, even if you disagree with Exodus 30, I think there are more reasons. This claim will make no sense. You could say just God is godly, or whatever it would mean. And that Thomistic reading of the Bible makes no sense. But the part which I wanted, and I have kind of a view like what you described, you pointed out like the writer of Exodus will not be aware about late, middle, Eve philosophy and later, right? The Renaissance
Yeah.
No,
philosophy.
they were aware of idealism. Yes, they were.
That's not what he said.
It's not
I
modern
have a different
idealism.
question. It is related in the same framework what I heard, and I want to see a theologian who is a Christian.
Yeah.
So you know in Genesis 3, with the falling in sin, there is the story with the serpent. And my view, I made this criticism, but I want to get it from a philosopher. Maybe I misunderstand it. I was in the same reason. Whoever wrote Genesis 3 will not know the theology and the concepts of free will because they are made much later in the philosophical schools.
Oh.
And again, you may miss the question, or you can say, I will never ask it, it's fine, answer.
No,
But
no,
it looks to
yeah.
me the same argument,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I
Okay.
can go down.
Yeah, no. So I think what I would say, so I don't, yeah. So I'll answer this briefly, and then I want to get back to the conversation I was having because I know you've been waiting. To
Yes, yes, that's
yeah,
good.
yeah.
That's all I wanted.
I think that in the ancient world, like with Moses, I think they would have had the concepts of free will, things like that. They may not use it in the later like vernacular and terminology that we come to express these things with, and like in modern parlance and things like that. But I think they have concepts of like moral responsibility, which I think presupposes freedom of the will, and things along those lines. I think most people in general like tend to think that they have like freedom when it comes to their actions, stuff like that. So I would say that even if they may, like Moses may, or not Moses, Adam or someone like that may have not expressed the idea of being like, oh, I have libertarian free will, or this is defined as a principle of alternative possibilities, or so on and so forth. I think they still had those concepts. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. That's
Yeah.
all.
Okay.
Thank
Yeah.
you
No
for your
problem.
time.
Yeah. Thanks, Skeptic. All right. So going back. Okay. So let's maybe then go back and me and you can try to then maybe I can try better than to parse out what you're saying. So I gave that syllogism, and it seemed then in the syllogism that you committed yourself to Moses saw all of God, right? That's the thing you said.
Well, when you say all, if you're just cashing that out to be the entirety of substance, no, but that expression would be him with
Wait. So here, okay. So then maybe then let's cash out what we mean by that. There is nothing that you can point to and say that is God, like, and that is the being God, and that is something that Moses didn't see, right? So like, let's say for instance, I have a book in front of me, right? Right now, I am not seeing. This is what I'm actually. I'll tell you what we'll do. I'll use this. This is a book I just recently released that's free. This book is I'm not seeing all of it right now. Why? Because there's stuff inside of it that I'm not seeing. Like I'm not seeing some of the pages, right? So I'm seeing some of this book. I'm not seeing none of this book because I am seeing some. I'm not seeing all of this book, right? So what I'm asking is when Moses saw Yahweh, is it the case that there is anything that is that either is Yahweh or is internal to Yahweh that Moses didn't see?
Yeah.
Okay, so then Moses didn't see all of Yahweh, he saw part of Yahweh. Because if I can point to something and I can say, this is Yahweh, this is either identical to Yahweh or this is part of Yahweh, and Moses didn't see that thing, then it's not the case that Moses saw all of Yahweh. So now you're with me and you're saying Moses saw part of Yahweh.
Well, no, I think part is playing a big role. We would say some. So now that you actually cashed out your
what does
terms,
some mean? I'm confused. What do you mean some? Yeah, what does that mean?
You don't know what some means?
Not in this context, because I use that to be synonymous with part. I would say I see some of my book right now, and I think that's synonymous with me saying I see part of my book. But you said, oh, well, we wouldn't say part, it would say some. So if these are two distinct things, I would love to hear the distinction between part and some.
Well, if you're cashing them out the same way, but part wouldn't. If you're saying we saw some parts of God, yeah. So I wouldn't say parts, but if you want to say we saw some. Because parts would entail composition. I don't think some would entail composition. Like, for example, if...
I'm sorry, I just don't understand
I'm about to tell you. For example, let's say I covered my face, right? And then I just showed you my foot. I wouldn't say you saw parts of me, right?
Yeah, yes, I did. I saw part of you. I saw your foot.
Well,
I didn't see your face.
We would say, no, here's a difference. I'm a human. I'm compository. God isn't. God is.
But wait. The very question that we're addressing right now is whether or not God has parts, right? That's the very thing we're trying to figure out, which is what does the scripture testify, right? So you can't presuppose your conclusion as part of the argument. That's the very thing that we're trying to have a dialogue
I'm telling
about.
you, it's to the impossibility contrary.
Okay. So you're saying, okay, I want to make sure we're clear. So you have a position, which is that God doesn't have any parts. And then we're going to scripture, and you have this conclusion, and you're using that conclusion to force your view into scripture and not have to deal with what scripture actually says.
Well, here's the thing. This is what you're not understanding. We do know, like, from a logical standpoint, we know logically a triune God is necessary, and a God with no composite that's not composites necessary.
Okay, let's go
And
there.
the Christian worldview is the only worldview that accounts for that. So this is why we would say the Christian worldview is true.
Wait, let's pause there. Okay, so we're trying to have an argument about whether or not God has parts. Like that's the question, right? And the point of my argument is I'm trying to show you that the idea that God doesn't have parts is not biblical. Okay.
Well,
now
you would be presupposing a absolute divinely simple God by even invoking a proposition. That's what I'm saying. It's
why would I have to presuppose divine simplicity to figure out what's in the Bible?
Let's do the impossibility contrary now. If you want to ask me
so
what that possibility
let's do that.
is.
Yeah, let's show the impossibility contrary. Let's do it.
Perfect. So I'm going to make the claims, but then I'll give you justification.
Can I clarify what my position is, just so you know, like just so everyone in the audience knows? Yeah, I'm a thoroughgoing partialist. I think that there are things internal to God that are not identical to God. So what you've claimed is that my position is logically impossible. That there's going to be some. Okay, so that's what you're going to show. Great, let's do it.
Yeah, perfect. So we know. I'm gonna make the claims, and then I'll give the justification. We know, logically speaking, right, for reality to exist, there has to be a triune God, right, and there has to be a simple God.
Wait, pause. Wait, that's what I'm contesting. So you're setting up.
I told you I'm gonna give you a justification. I told you I'm gonna give you.
Okay. So it seemed like that was a premise of your argument. Okay, I just wanted to make sure. Okay, so that's what you're arguing for. Okay, go for it.
So yeah, so I was saying it's logically necessary that we have a triune God. Would you agree on that part?
Logically necessary? I'm a Trinitarian, so I'm not going to object to you on the Trinity. I don't see any reason to think why like a Trinitarian God is logically necessary. But that's not like I'm not going to object to you on the Trinity because I'm a Trinitarian. Just so like I'm skeptical of arguments to try to get to the logical necessity of the Trinity.
Yeah, I can tell you why the Trinity would have to logically.
I know the arguments for that. I'm already a Trinitarian, so like we can skip that and just go to the next part.
Okay,
like,
so
you know what I mean?
You would agree it's logically necessary for God to be triune.
I mean, I don't agree with that, but I'll grant it for the sake of the argument. Yeah.
No. What do you mean you don't agree with that?
I don't see any reason to without some. I think that God is triune, and I think that because of revelation. But I don't see how to get the idea that God is necessarily like it is a logical contradiction for God to be anything other than the Trinity.
I can tell you why.
But I'm a Trinitarian, so why are we arguing about that? Just go to the next point of your argument. I can grant this for the sake of argument. I'll grant this for the sake of argument that God is, necessarily. I can grant that for the sake of argument. I'm just saying, like, I would be skeptical of the arguments getting us there, but because I'm a Trinitarian and you're a Trinitarian, I'm telling you, I'm not going to object. Let's put it this way. I think God is essentially triune. Okay, so I'm not going to object to you on the Trinity. That's not going to be where I object to you.
It would have to be logically necessary then.
That doesn't. Please just give your argument.
Justification why.
Just give your. I want your. Okay, just tell you what. Go ahead and cash out your argument because it seems like we're getting hung up on something that it's not gonna. This is not going to be the central area me and you disagree with. Like this is not going to be the main area you and I disagree with because we're both Trinitarians. What I want us to talk about is this idea that God can't be composed, that God can't have any parts. That's where I think the beef lies. So then, rather than me and you talking about this thing, which is somewhere I don't think me and you are going to have in the end a whole lot of disagreement, I'd rather us talk and spend more time about this other thing. So that's what I'm asking. Can we please focus on the main area we disagree with, which is whether or not God has parts? Because I think the persons of the Trinity, I think there are parts of God.
Well, yeah, that's a big problem, but...
Okay, so go ahead and give that argument.
Yeah, but first, can you, at least for... You don't have to agree personally, but at least for the sake of argument, do you agree Trinity would have to logically be necessary?
I said I would grant that so we can continue. So we can continue. I'll grant that for the sake of argument.
Now we have one category out the way. We know that the God has to be triune, right? It's logically necessary for God to be triune. Okay, perfect. Now this is where we're going to get to parts, right? It has to logically be necessary that God doesn't have any parts. Now, if you want to ask me why does it have to be logically necessary God doesn't have any parts, right? For God to have parts, right, would you agree that would mean he's composite? That's a little definition of composite.
I would, if you by composite you mean have parts, I would agree that if God has parts, then that means he has parts.
Okay, yeah. Perfect. Now this makes you no different from a Muslim, but we'll address this right now. So, if God has parts, my claim is that he can't account for anything in reality at all. Now, if you want to ask me why is this the case, why can't God account for anything in reality at all? Yeah, I'll tell you why. Particulars and universals exist. Would you agree?
No. I'm not a Platonist. Yeah, I'm not a Platonist. I don't think that abstract objects exist.
Okay, amazing. Particulars and universals don't exist. Okay, amazing. If particulars and universals don't exist, then guess what? You would say that if particulars and universals don't exist, guess what? God isn't existence. If God
Wait,
isn't
what?
exist,
Why
yeah,
would
yeah,
I
yeah, yeah.
preclude that? Okay, so let's follow his logic. Let's follow his logic, everyone.
Mhm.
He's trying to give me an argument for why God can't have parts.
Yeah, I'll tell. Wait, hold on.
And then
I
and
haven't
then we
really given
jump
the
down to
argument
whether or
yet.
not universals or particulars exist. That's now
Yeah,
where
I'll give
we're
you the
at.
argument. I can give you the argument.
Okay, so let me let
Existence-
me
hold
ask
on.
this. Wait, let me ask
Existence
this.
is a Can I make the argument at least real quick?
Go for it.
Existence is a universal. We in a Thomistic world, we would say that God is.
I'm not a
universal.
Thomist. You're presupposing Thomism. You're supposed to be arguing for Thomism. So you
Yeah,
cannot presuppose your worldview when
it's
giving
clear
an
and possibly the
argument
contrary.
against my worldview. You understand that, right?
Yeah,
You
I'm telling
understand
it's
that's
clear
how
and
this all works.
possibility of the contrary. It has to be the case. God is existence.
Okay, but I think to say that something is, right, to say that something exists, okay, if you want to say God's existence, okay, like
Yeah,
I'm a little confused on what that means.
Yeah, it has to logically be the case. God is substance itself. Has to logically be the case.
Okay, but now you're telling me it has to logically be the case that God, existence, right? That has to be something in which there are no parts. That's what you and I are hung up
No,
on,
no,
right?
no. What we're getting to that, but we have to go through a line. Do you agree that God is existence? Yes or no?
No, I think God exists.
Oh, so God isn't existence.
No, I don't think that statement makes sense.
Oh,
Like, I
okay.
don't understand what it means to say that God is existence. I understand what it means to say God exists. Like he's a being, he's real, he exemplifies properties, things like
Okay,
that.
okay,
I get
perfect,
that. I don't understand this other statement you're
Yeah,
making.
I could tell you the distinction. There's a distinction between God. Yeah, I'll tell you. Right. Existence isn't divisible, right? We would say there's a distinction between something that participates in existence and something that is, right? You are not
But wait.
identical to existence, right?
Yeah, I agree, but you're
perfect,
using
perfect.
universal. Wait, you're treating existence like an abstract. Am I correct that existence under your worldview is an abstract object?
Existence would be existence is a universal, and everything just participates under it.
Okay, so in a similar way that like yellow is a universal, and this is participating in it, right?
Yes.
Okay,
we would say
and you think
God-
yellow is an actual object that exists? It's an abstract object that exists, right?
Do I think yellow is like something abstract object? Yeah.
I don't know why you hesitated there. You said you believe in universal, so it seems like
Yeah.
you would have to believe that yellow exists. Like,
Yes.
yeah, I don't think there's an object called yellow that's floating around that this just happens to correspond
We
to.
wouldn't say that. We would say it's a concept grounded in the mind of God. Yeah.
Okay, but you're still saying it's an object, like it's a thing that exists.
Yeah, it's grounded in the mind of God. Yes, correct.
Okay, cool. But what I'm saying is I don't hold to that position. Like I don't think there's
perfect. I'm trying to
yeah.
prove absurdum. I'm trying to prove absurdum. If you want to say that God is just participates in existence, then guess what? God, you can't say that God grounds logic. You can't say God grounds anything at all, and I'll give you justification why. If God is not existence itself, that means he participates under existence.
No, because I don't think existence is an abstract object that exists. I'm a nominalist. I've told you this. Do you understand what I'm saying here? You're treating existence like it's an object, like it's a thing, and oops, God's under it, and he participates with it. I don't hold to that view. I don't hold to that metaphysics. I don't think there's this thing called existence, and that God either is identical to it or participates under it, right? I'm an anti-realist about abstract objects. So you're presupposing a specific worldview, a specific metaphysics about abstract objects, which I don't maintain.
Okay. So if you just answer the question, is God identical to existence? Yes or no? And if you want to say that's a loaded question, give me the objectionable premise.
No, I've already told you he's not identical to existence,
Okay,
or
God
at least
is not
not.
identical to existence. Okay, perfect. Now
I
you know
think
what
God
happens here?
exists.
Now you
Because
know what
I don't
happens
think
here?
existence is a thing that exists. It stands in these identity relationships. I've already told you
Is
this.
existence divisible? Yes or no?
I don't think existence is an object.
Wait. So you?
I've told you this. Are you listening to what I'm
So it's a
saying?
yes or it's a yes or no. It's a yes or
No,
no.
because I don't think it exists. I don't
Okay,
think you can
amazing.
divide
So
objects
we
that
will-
don't exist.
Okay, so existence is not divisible. Perfect. If you want to say existence is non-divisible, that means you can't divide it. But you want to say existence doesn't really exist, then that's just fucking self-contradictory. It's a performative
No, it's
contradiction.
not. I don't think seven, like, I don't think the object seven, I don't think that's an object that exists that somehow, like, exemplifies what it
Do you
means to
think
be
it's a
seven.
concept? Do you think it's a concept? Yes or no?
Do I think it's a concept, like an abstract thing, like something we think about?
Is it a concept that exists? Yes or no?
There are ideas about it, but I do not think it is an. I do not think it's an object that exists. I just answered your question, dude. I've got
You didn't
four
say yes
people
or no.
requesting to come up, dude. I've had 4 people requesting to come
Is
up,
it
and
a
you and I have
concept
just
that
gone in
exists? You're
circles.
not answering the
I've
question.
already answered that to you. I think there are objects. I think we have the concept of it, right? So like I might have the concept of like, I don't know, I'm gonna go like take a vacation. I might have the concept of a vacation in my mind. So it exists in the sense that it's like an idea that we can think about. But I do not think there's a set object that exists in reality called the number 7. Like that's what I
Okay, so
reject.
your answer is no.
And in
That's
the
all
way
I'm
that I
asking.
think you're saying it, yeah, that's what I'm
Okay,
saying.
okay, perfect. So the concept of 7 doesn't actually exist. So that you want, so if
That's
you
not
give that up,
and not in the heavy ontological sense that you're
okay, if you want to give that
presupposing.
up,
Yeah,
then if you want to give it that up, then you're saying quantities don't actually exist conceptually. If quantities don't actually exist conceptually, then nothing can exist because everything has to be categorized under a quantity.
including God, right?
God is quantity. We would say God is quantity. God is existence.
Okay, but I don't think that makes any sense. You and I are going in circles. I don't think we're going to make much progress. I have 4 people requesting to come up. I've been
So
patient with you.
You don't want to track. That's the thing.
I've been trying to track. All you can do is presuppose
You
Thomism or
want to say God
presuppose
participates
Platonism.
in existence. Do you know that makes no sense? If God participates in existence, he's not identical to existence and he can't ground existence.
I've already told you I don't think existence is a thing that exists that God participates in. I'm disconnecting you because there reaches a point where you were just not listening to the words that are coming out of my mouth. So we're going to have a little reset. We're going to bring up the next guest.